All right, Nate, the last game on the slate here on Tuesday night is the probably most surprising one so far. I mean, Devin Booker being out for the Suns in this Pelicans Suns series that's going back to Phoenix tied 2-2 in a 1 versus technically 9 matchup here for the Pelicans. I think, we say surprising, but Devin Booker being out wasn't expected. And I think if Devin Booker was in this series, that this is a little bit different and probably at least 3-1, right? In this one, there's a lot to look at. There was plenty to see in game 4 that has you feeling good about the Pellies. My main thing is, can Chris Paul hold an offense by himself by scoring and getting assists? Because he needs to get a lot more than, the 14 points a game he's averaging so far for them to win this series. We've got a 6.5 line in favor of Phoenix right now with a 215.5 total or so. I have listed here on DraftKings for both of those. So I guess what do you do with that? It seems like that's too high for in terms of the spread there. After we just saw the Suns struggle so much on offense against those Pelicans.
Yeah, it's too high. I mean, although you are talking about a completely different atmosphere that the Pelicans clearly fed off a rabid crowd. And when you talk about winning the hustle plays, winning the free throw battle, which Monty Williams definitely wanted to point out post game, 42-15 for the Pelicans. Not that that's unexpected when Phoenix was 27th in free throw attempts this year, and the Pels allowed the second most points off free throws on the road. So I don't think it's going to really change. I mean, the second lowest percentage of their points off free throws. So that doesn't really indicate it's going to change tonight. But I think the offensive efficiency down the stretch is what I'm looking at. I like the over again. Even though Phoenix didn't come along, we went over by 5 points in game 4 and now back home. I know they did tend to go under after a loss this season. They also tend to cover and win by 8.5 points per game. But I mean, it's time to start talking about how the Suns regular season reflects in the playoffs and how Chris Paul, what we saw 2 years ago with OKC, excellent team against the spread, fizzled out completely in the playoffs because they had that intensity up all season. They didn't have another notch to go to. And I've always been scratching my head at people saying, like, the Suns, can anyone beat the Suns in the playoffs? Like, is it their championship to win? I'm like, I don't understand those odds, those future odds. I mean, yes, it's an easy road in the West, easier. But this team does not seem unbeatable by any means. They just had a really good regular season where they were consistently clutch down the stretch because they had 2 closers. And now they only have one, and he's getting hounded all over the floor and getting put in every action on defense. So CP3, though, I do trust to bounce back after a playoff career low 4 points. And if he does, he's still diming people up, right? Ayton and McGee went 37 points on 18 for 21 field goal shooting, scoring down low consistently. That's how Phoenix does score, Monty, not at the free throw line. And NOLA is now allowing 64% of their points off twos in the series. And that's consistent with what they were on the season, 8th highest percentage of points off twos all season down low. So, going into that game 4, both these teams had a 137 offensive rating in the fourth quarter. New Orleans passed Phoenix. Now they're 140 in the last 3, and Phoenix dropped a little bit because, they had their bench out there in the fourth quarter at that point. But the way the Pellies are scoring, the whole second half, they're shooting 48% from 3. In that fourth quarter, they're shooting 50% from 3. Brandon Ingram, 33.7 points per game the last 3 at a 139 offensive rating. And Phoenix can't afford to just put a stopper out there and try to play Torrey Craig and sacrifice their offense. Like, they're going to need Mikal to try to guard Ingram one-on-one and find them some offense on the other end. So I like the over. Again, this is a Pelicans team that is tough to guard. Since they got those 2 guys together, CJ and Ingram, it's not like the Suns can just put the clamps on like we saw in some of their playoff games last year, or like we saw a lot of times during the regular season. I mean, look, New Orleans went under in 8 of their last 11 road games during the regular season, but those games averaged 231, and we're talking about a 215 total. So I think that it's fine to just take the over, and there's different ways that it can get you there. Maybe Phoenix does have that avalanche, feeds off the home crowd, and they score 120. But maybe just as likely, the Pelicans continue to fight, and we're scoring around 115 both teams. So you can just take that spread, or you can tease it up to plus 10 with the Pels. That's the direction I would prefer to tease, because I don't know, Phoenix is in trouble here without one of their most vital players, to say the least, and without the versatility you might need in this particular series to both guard those two guys and to be able to score on the other end.
Yeah, man, it's not looking great for the Suns in a lot of ways, to be honest. It's definitely not looking great, just specifically relative to how great it was looking for them before this series started. I think there's a couple of things to look at. One, what we were talking about earlier. First of all, I agree with you in the over. Let me just say that out front, like that is my favorite bet for sure. I think I've also been, following what we've been saying in the last 3 Suns games, where in the middle of that third quarter, I look at what the, what the total is literally at 6 minutes in the third quarter of the last 3 games. Just look at what the total is and go, yeah, sure, that sounds good. 75 points in the next, 12, 16 minutes or whatever, 18 minutes, like, sounds good. Yeah, these teams are so insanely efficient offense. They scored 63 points in the fourth quarter of this last game. So it's what I look at is, CP3 would like to slow this game down a bit, obviously, and just get chippy with it and sort of do his thing. Problem is that half court offense with Ingram and CJ McCollum, and even throw Joval in there, is filthy right now. Like absolutely filthy. And it's been that way since the last 10 games that they've all been playing together, where they finally all came back from any kind of injuries, specifically BI, and came back healthy in those last 10. They have 121 offensive rating, 118 defensive rating, because they're definitely not defensive stoppers by any means. But I don't think there's anybody that can stop Brandon Ingram right now. And that's scary to say, because they've got Jay Crowder on him for most of the game. He's cooking him. He's also cooking Torrey Craig. So to your point, if Craig's not going to be hitting threes, then there's nothing for him to be doing. There's no reason for him to be out there. Then the other thing is, they don't have a sub for Devin Booker. Like Cam Johnson ain't it, because right now he's posting a 137 defensive rating individually. So they really can't keep him on the floor. And then Landry Shamit's coming in and actually doing a bit better, but also has his own 135 individual defensive rating. So they're getting cooked right now, man. And whomever, like between Jay Crowder and Mikal, Mikal's got his own problems at 100 in this last game, 125 individual, because CJ was cooking on him. And CJ wasn't even really scoring that much, but he was getting to his spots and really controlling the tempo of the offense. And it's not like there's any weird things. There's no weirdness and outlandish stats and outliers for what, the Pelicans are doing to win. They're not hitting a barrage of threes more so than they would normally. They only went 6 for 24 from 3. They got to the line a decent amount. Obviously the 42 attempts were talked about. That's more than a decent amount, but they're going to the basket. Like you said, Monty, like, I don't know if you know this, but your team doesn't go to the free throw line because they shoot mid-range shots all over the place. And even DeAndre Ayton, who's your center, is shooting power forward style, elbow jumpers, but more than he's, really backing anybody down and getting into the paint that much. They did score a good amount of their points from the paint in game 3, which really helped them because DA really maintained his dominance throughout the game. And we still maintain that he's doing really well, but he's doing well in part because CP3 is getting him to his spots. But the problem is CP3 putting up the points needs to happen at this point. I'm actually going to bet on that. I'm going to look for these player props, and I'm going to hit CP3 probably either points and assists, points, rebounds, and assists. Just CP3 bets. I think this is, what he's shown us in the last couple of years, even when he was with Houston, is if you put his back against the wall, he's now a playoff performer. And that was definitely the case last year. And I want to continue to put my money on that, as it hit pretty well in last year's playoff scores with Chris Paul.
Yeah, legacy game right here. I mean, for CP3, to say the least. And I don't think Jose Alvarado being a pest is going to stop him from getting his. It didn't in game 3 when he had 28 points, 14 assists. He'll adjust. The officials will adjust. I mean, Monty, he knows that, of course. He knows what his team does. He's just trying to game it a little bit, add those comments and hope to get a few more calls and make it easier for Ayton and McGee to keep doing what they've been doing down in the paint without getting banged up. If they continue to attack, they will probably get a few more calls at home, to say the least. The Suns, I mean, they went under in 5 straight home games before this series started, but they went over in 5 straight playoff home games last year. They went 7-3 against the spread in the playoffs. Of course, I mean, you had Booker out there though to be the winner there, but the point is that their defense was not as lights out as you might expect when you have guys that are a problem, like Giannis in 3 of those 5 overs. And Brandon Ingram is a problem. Like, let's be real. There was one play where, they put Torrey Craig out there, like, all right, he's out there for his defense. Ingram just went right and go gadget armed, flushed it over his head. And Torrey Craig's supposed to be one of the best individual matchups you could put on the guy. Definitely when you look up and down your roster to stop him from getting to the rim. He couldn't do that at all. I mean, Ingram is a coming out party for him this year and in these playoffs. And with CJ as his Robin when CP3 doesn't have his sidekick, I trust the Pelicans to keep this relatively close and to keep scoring, more importantly, because if we're betting the over, we want CP3 to be doing this with his mid-range reliability in the fourth quarter. We don't want the Suns to be locking up and just running away in the third quarter in some sort of non-competitive affair. Even if they do, though, 215 is still a pretty damn low total.
Yeah, even if you feel like this is somewhat of a blowout for the Suns, which I don't. I think BI is legit. I think he's a big-time performer. He's a big-time scorer. He averages 3 more points per game, almost 2.5 more points per game on the road this season than he does at home, showing his gamerness, or however you want to phrase that, because he doesn't care, right? He takes that on and performs just as well on the road, if not better. So I think he does keep this game. And like you were saying, even if this is a blowout, I don't think it's a blowout because the Pellies get held to 95 points or whatever. Like that's not the style of game that this is. That it just isn't because they can't. Between the 2 guys that they have, that's enough for them right now. With the added of Joval, Devontae Graham, at least he's a guy who can get hot and shooting a little bit better after trying to come back from injury. You can't expect their role players, not like you said, Jose Alvarado in New Orleans with that crowd, a little bit different than Jose Alvarado in Phoenix guarding Chris Paul, where he's it's his home turf. So, but I still think over is a play. I'm going to look for some Ingram props as well, as even if they try to get the ball out of his hands and double him, I think he can shoot over teams. And then you talk about the ancillary stats for him, where he can still dime people up and find the open man. So that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. We're going to continue to bring you every single playoff video for each of these games throughout the postseason here, as well as that player props one we'll have for you each and every day. So until we see you next, happy betting.